Okay. Once again, I am live for Odinmade Hero. This series where I just try and log on for a couple hours every day and learn how to make a game from Casey Muratori here. Yesterday was a good day, certainly better than last Friday, where the day ended on a very broken and sad note. I was able to sort that out over the weekend, and yesterday we were able to get something that more closely resembles a player character on the screen instead of just some rectangle. And we can turn in every direction and navigate between tile rooms, and it's looking better. We're off to a strong start this week. We'll see if we can keep it up. I think today is mostly just going to be cleaning up a lot of this bitmap drawing code, which I've already tried to do as best I can. If I go down to my draw bitmap call, I just kind of massaged the code a little bit so that I could be sure, that I'm leaving things off in a place that I'm comfortable with. We get our destination offset for the destination pixel we're trying to draw to in the frame buffer, and then we index into the frame buffer using that offset. And we do the same thing with the bitmaps memory, and we just assert that those offsets, both those offsets, are within the bounds of the memory that we are, in the case of the bitmap, reading from, and in the case of the frame buffer, writing to. So at this point, I haven't seen any more strange behavior. I hope that continues. We'll see as we move forward here, because like I said, we're probably going to clean up some more stuff here. I don't know if it might be a little bit redundant. This actually looks like a shorter day too, so maybe that'll be a shorter stream. But this might be a day where, for instance, Casey goes and then reverses the load code for reading the bitmap memory in. But I'm already doing that just because it was relatively straightforward once I figured out how to get the memory from the original file to be copied without crashing the program. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump right in and see what we learned today from Casey.
There we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 40 of Handmade Hero. What is very exciting about day 40, you may ask, day 40 marks our first week of programming. As you know, the 40-hour work week is relatively common as a amount of time to be working during the week. And so technically, we have now done 40 hours or so. Maybe we've done a little bit more. A couple streams have gone longer. We did double-length stream one time, so we're probably more at like 42 hours of programming. But we have basically now done a full week's worth of programming. So if the stream started Monday morning at 9 a.m. sharp, we are now at Friday, 1 hour before 5. We're at 4 p.m. So I think that is a pretty good week of program that we've done. And we've got a lot to show for it. Things have progressed extremely well, I would say. Certainly probably better than if you'd asked me when we were starting if things would go so smoothly. I don't think I would have said that they would have. I think I would have predicted us to be having a lot more troubles than we had. But actually, we've gotten to the point where essentially we had a full freely scrolling tile map. We've now implemented camera support, so basically the camera is locked, and when you walk off screens, you can walk back and forth between them. We've got loop loud code editing in there. We have our own Win302 abstraction layer with sound and graphics. We have alpha blended bitmap splitting. So things are pretty far along, actually, and that actually surprised me. After only 1 week of programming, I would have suspected maybe, especially because we're doing explanations the whole time, I would have expected it to be a little rougher than that. But for whatever reason, it wasn't, and that's pretty awesome. So here was we're wrapping up week 40, I think, or I should say wrapping up day 40, the end of our first working week. Like I said, I kind of just want to go through everything that I've written down as to-dos and just make sure everything's cleaned up, because I want to start the math stuff clean, because I think the next thing we need to do is start talking about math pretty seriously. So I want to go through and just clean up anything that we haven't sort of spent enough time just to kind of get out of our way. And then we can kind of bring our first week of programming to a close. All right. So let's take a look here. We already did yesterday. I snuck in one of the main things that was on the to-do list, which was to fix, to put in a lock file for our PDB so that our hot loading would load debug symbols all the time. It wouldn't, so that Visual Studio wouldn't get confused. So that was a good thing. We took care also, another thing that I had written down was that I wanted to make sure that the people who were doing work on the people who were doing work on other platform layers wouldn't have trouble, so we cleaned some of that up and moved stuff into Handmade Platform that would help them. So that's finished up now as well. Let's see. I think the only other stuff I have here is, first of all, I don't know if we ever fixed this, but I believe someone was saying that we still had a version of T-Sign sitting around. Yes, we do. So we still had T-Sign sitting in the Win32 sound output, even though we weren't using it anymore. So I wanted to get that out of there.
I wonder if I even still have that. Like some of these things I just notice as I'm working through, and I'll pick up on the fact that Casey has not, and is that in the, yeah, that's in the platform code. Has not made a change that he said he was going to do, or like he got rid of something and then he still has this member hanging around like he does right here in the sound output. But yeah, it looks like I wiped that out. I don't see a T sign there, so doesn't hurt to check.
So people aren't wondering what that variable's doing there. I wanted to go ahead also, and in our platform code, if you remember, we talked about this a little bit, but people were talking about it on the forum. Sometimes people talk about stuff about the code in the forums without having actually watched the episode where I explained why things are done, and they were upset about this because they didn't like the fact that I was using pound defiance. I think they were maybe macrophobic or something, which is not a very good way to be. You don't really want to be macrophobic in C or C++ because C and C++ have extremely weak text processing ability built into them. Macros are pretty much your only option. I wish they had a lot more power in the macros or a lot more power in the language, one or the other, but unfortunately they have neither of those, and so that's where you're at. Anyway, the reason for these guys, again, I'll just restate it, is that static as a keyword in C actually means many things, and I do not like that fact. Not because of readability. This has nothing to do with me being able to read the code, because I would always know. That was what the person was saying on the forums. They were like, I think a C programmer always knows what they are. Sure. But that has nothing to do with it. Readability has nothing to do with it whatsoever. It's searchability. You want to be able to know where your global variables and your local globals are at a moment's notice. And if all of your functions have static in front of them, then you can no longer do like automated grepping to see whether you have any global variables, for example, in your code that's supposed to be thread safe, or in DLLs that you don't want to have any variables in them, like we're doing hot loading, so we better not have any globals in them. If you want to do a grep, like I want to be able to say, at any time, I want to be able to say, show me all of the global variables. And I need to know that I can guaranteedly get that back, right? And so, for example, this right here is a global variable. Now I know what's the one global variable that we have inside our program. It's this guy, right? And that's okay because he never changes. So that's a really quick way for me to immediately know that our DLL is okay. Similarly, I can say, do any of our what do I call it? Our functions have any of those in there? What is it? Local persist. Local persist. There we go. And thankfully, we don't have any of those. We don't have to worry about them. That's the reason you do this, and you absolutely should. This is not, I don't think, a matter of taste. You really want to be able to do that searching to make sure that you don't have serious problems you just aren't going to notice until you have some really crazy case of a multi-threaded problem that you didn't realize could happen because you had global variables and something that was getting called for multiple threads.
I don't know if there's really an equivalent thing that I could do for Odin here. And I looked into this a little bit when I was trying to figure out the arena code, I believe. Right? Like we come down here. Yeah. But it turns out that was just kind of tangential to this notion of like using pound define or type def. I remember reading that, and these are from the words of the creator of Odin himself, where he said that basically this here is essentially like C's pound define. Now, if I was to like, yeah, I don't know what that would look like if you were to try and like define your own type for like whether something is global or it's like a local variable that persists each time that block of code is run. But it also, excuse me, geez, has not really come up at all. And you can do, I can't remember what I did to even have a, yeah, I think it's just like this. Yeah, that's right. It's something like this. It's like you just kind of decorate it. Like so. If you wanted it to be static. Now, I don't know. I mean, if a variable was going to be global, it would just be in the global state. Like, so this would be like my static int. Yeah, so there you go. Like, if it's static, if I was to define it inside of here, but you wouldn't need to do that in the global scope because it's just implicitly in the global scope. But I couldn't, like what Casey is describing here, I couldn't just search my project for like my global variables. I would know based on like when I see it, but I couldn't search and be like, okay, what are all the global variables that I have? I don't even think I have any. Well, that's not true. There's some basically in the same places where Casey is using them. Like I have these global controller handles and the rumble handles for like the haptic stuff, which I think isn't working right now, or at least it wasn't working on my Mac. I never bothered to see if that was working on Windows. Maybe I should do that. Oh, and then they're all just named globally. So this should probably be, these should be global controller handles and rumble handles probably. That's probably what I should do. So I guess that's what I decided to do. But he names them globally anyways. He has a global variable type, you know, which is just static in that context that he's using it in. And then, you know, he's got, he names it global too, using his own naming convention of title case for variables. So add a global prefix to these. So that's how I guess I would do it. Of course, that doesn't work the best because, yeah, well, this is how you would do it. You'd have like global and then like a wildcard and then something like that. I don't know how I would grep for that, but I don't think it matters too much. I was just kind of curious to see, like, how would I think about doing this? I just haven't had that case where I'm like worried about some global that I've defined and later on I want to go and look at it. Also because I'm just implicitly trusting that he's defining things globally only when they're necessary, and then he'll make a note about how he doesn't intend for it to always be global. Like I think this global running thing, I think he put in a to-do somewhere or talked about coming back at least to get rid of that. So yeah, I don't know. What did I just do? Why are you complaining about something that isn't there, OLS? Howdy, devil. Things are good. We're in good shape. We're starting off this week stronger, much stronger than we ended off last week, so I feel good about that.
So basically, there's that. But what I wanted to do is I also wanted to define static to no, like, OMG, do not compile bad, right? Or something like that. To make sure that we can put that somewhere where it's not going to actually ever happen, right? I'm trying to think if there's some way we can do this. Because what I want to do is make it so that, like, so these, but this macro is going to get, I'm trying to think of what I could do. I want to basically make it, I was trying to think of what I could do. I've never done this before. I was trying to think of what I could do so that static could never be typed by itself. But it's going to do the replacement twice in a row. You know, like if I pound define internal, then it's going to replace it with static, and then it's going to apply the other macro. What I want to do is not have it apply the other macro. I'm trying to think if there's any way I could actually make that happen. I wonder if this works. Probably not. It probably only works with, well, actually, let's see. Let's see if I can do this. I'm just, macros are kind of nasty in C. All right. Let's see. Let's see if we can outsmart the macro system, you know, being our, oops, it's no good, being our wily little selves. Okay. So I tried to outsmart it by saying, well, maybe if I can paste combine static into a new thing, maybe that will work. But I guess not. Oh, well, new line constant. So that's actually just because of that. So that's fine. Let's take a look. So no, we can't. I was thinking maybe if I paste combined them together, you know, so that basically it would be the result of a paste operator. This pound is the paste operator in C++'s macro processor, which basically takes two inputs and welds them together. And I was thinking, I wonder if maybe it wouldn't do replacement on those, but apparently it still runs the macro processor even on those. So there's no refuge there for us. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, but it doesn't really seem like there's something I can do. Oh well. So that's I guess just something that will have to be left for our own sort of our own diligence. So basically what I'll have to do, which is what I normally do, is just this. So I'll have to do a check which basically says, okay, what, you know, where did I actually type static, and let's make sure that it's only in those particular places. So what I could do as well is basically, you know, we have our build.bat. We could also have a thing which is like static check.bat, which does something like statics found. And then it does that that sort of find stir minus, it does this line of code, basically. Oops. So it does that, and searches for all of the things that we might want to find. So basically, something like this. So we'll search for local persist, and we'll search for global variable, and we'll do basically this. So statics found should be nothing, basically, except for the header file, and then globals found, we'll do that, and I'll put in some empty echoes here. All right, and so then I'll be able to go ahead and run this. This is basically the poor man's version of what I just did, and that can basically tell me very quickly. Oh, and I should also do a instead of doing these, there we go, do an echo off, like so, and these will have to basically be something like that. I don't know if you can you do like a space? No, you can't really echo a space. It looks like it just actually echoes. That's funny. All right.
I guess the way that I would probably deal with this is I would probably write some commands in Vim and then add like a mapping to those in my NeoVim config, and then just have it so that I can, you know, the same way I have my build and run command set up, I have it mapped to my leader key and then BAR for build and run, so that it'll run my build.bat and then run the executable that falls out of that. And I'm so lazy, I haven't even made this OS specific. I just have code modified on my Windows machine, and then on my Mac, like I have my base config, and then I've got local changes stashed, which is bad. But I need to commit that and keep it around so that you know, it'll just work wherever I pull it down from. But so something like that. I don't know what I would call that, like find globals FG. I bet FG is already mapped to something. Nope. Doesn't seem like it anyway. So I don't know. I don't even want to add a to-do for that. It's just something that if I'm ever compelled to do so, because I'm like, where are my globals? Where are my... I mean, because well, the way I would do this, if I was looking for like the local persists, as he calls them, is I would just, you know, look for static or add static. I don't know what the difference is wrapping that in parens or not. And I called it a decorator, but I actually can't remember what it's called properly in Odin.
Oh, we'll use that for now. So this way we can actually, I guess, go ahead and get an easy report, which is, I guess, the next best thing. And this will basically tell us where we have those statics and what they are, which seems like good enough. Yeah. So we probably also only need to check. I don't know if I can. I assume I can do this. I don't use find stir except from within Emacs. I assume I can do something like that.
It is called a variable attribute. This attribute can be applied to a variable to have it keep its state even when going out of scope. But it's the same behavior as a static local variable in C, and then you have some others too. Thread local can be applied to a variable at file scope. Interesting. So if I wanted something to be like a global variable, but only at the file level, I would use this, maybe. but they're all called attributes generally, which is a nice, very generic term, because you have different attributes, you know, where we can mark static for a variable, and then we can also do the same thing for tests, which we haven't implemented any of. I can't even remember if I ever got to a point where Casey was implementing any like proper tests with Zig. I don't think I ever got that far, but you know, this will be one that I need to get comfortable with, because I like to write me some tests.
So that it doesn't check batch files. Yeah, so I could basically do something like this, which sort of checks all of the things. So I could set a variable, which is like, you know, wildcard, and I could basically say, all right, those are all the things that I'd like to check for, right? I don't really want to check inside batch files or inside binaries or anything like that. So let's go ahead and say it that way. And then that'll be, I guess, our you know, we'll call that our reasonable check. That'll be good enough. So that way I can always go out here and check periodically if I want to sort of say, all right, here's all the stuff that where we actually type static. And so we'll make sure that essentially it's never anything other than these 3 lines, right? If we see anything else there, we know we've made a mistake. And then similarly here, this will basically tell us whether we have any of those globals. It'll tell us all the ones we've got. And right now, this is fine. They're in the platform layer, which is what we want. So any platform layer code is totally allowed to global variable it up. But anything in the game code is not. So basically, if we see a global like this in the game code, we basically know that it is something which has to be a constant, right? It had better be something that's never going to be mutated. And in this case, that's true. And so we're fine with that. And again, the reason for that is we're doing hot loading. So even if there was a, you know, even if there's a totally legitimate reason to use a global variable, we need to use another method so that our hot loading would work for any global variable that's going to be mutated. Because, you know, if we're changing that global variable, and it was baked into the data segment of the program, which is where these global variables are going to be. When it gets reloaded, we won't have those changes that were made, right? The reload of the DLL will clobber the changes, and that will break our hot loading. So we don't want to ever do that. All right. I think that's about it for that. I think that I had written down here, which is about the static stuff. So get rid of that. We couldn't quite do what I had hoped maybe might be possible, but sadly was not, just because of the way the macroprocessor works. There might still be some trickery that you could do. So if someone has a good tricky idea about how to make it so that you just can't type it at all, please let me know. Okay. So another thing.
Devil asked, I must have missed a stream yesterday. What was the issue with the BMP? So yeah, I did stream yesterday, and I kind of explained it in detail, but the abridged version is that this call here, BMP load from file, was not loading in the alpha channel properly. And so then I was making another call to the image package that was like alpha add if missing, this one right here, right? And that was adding the alpha channel to an image that it should have been reading improperly. And basically I wound up having to do kind of some weird fusion of both reading in the raw bytes from the file and getting the bitmap header from this load from file call out the BMP package. And then using the combination of those two reads, I was able to get out the pixel data in the way that it needed to be pulled out from. And I basically just had to copy what Casey was doing with this bit fields compression stuff. So we did a bit scan forward by calling the count trailing zeros proc off of the intrinsics package. So wound up looking quite a bit like Casey's, but rather than going through the trouble of writing from the bottom row of the bitmap memory into the top row of where it should be, I actually swap the pixels during the read so that I don't have to do that when I'm drawing to the frame buffer. And that's the short version, but if you're interested in the more lengthy one, I kind of stepped through it a little bit more granularly in the beginning of the last stream.
What I want to do is, some people were worried about the mouse cursor, and we kind of talked about this a little bit, but there's really no reason for us not to just fix it for now. We haven't really, you can see what we got to do here, which is control cursor visibility. And so, actually, you know, we have a fair bit of time today. I want to kind of look at these. I feel like, just looking at these here, I feel like, so first of all, time begin period, I feel like we did, right? We did do time begin period, yeah. So basically, time begin period and sleep got done. We haven't really.
I have not looked at any of that really. Up here. I mean, I did. What was it? SDL sleep. SDL. I thought I was calling sleep somewhere. Oh, it's called SDL.delay. But yeah, same thing. Okay. And then, what was he just talking about? About full screen support and cursor visibility. I think that's the title of today's episode, so that's what we're probably going to look at.
Finished our timing loops because that's going to be for later, but we did do that. So a couple things that we had here. One was also, we had that the stuff that I was working on there where we had the sort of we had done a little work where we could actually show the game while we were in the editor, and I'm kind of thinking maybe that's something that I'd like to bring back, because we've had a bunch of times where it would have been nice to have the game still showing in the background behind the editor. So I don't know, that might be something to talk about. And then also toggling full screen support might be a nice thing to do. It might be nice to start thinking about changing the resolution of things and allowing that to get passed down to the game, because I think that's something we want to use for render tests and stuff. I don't know, it's something to think about. But it looks like the rest of these are stuff more for later on down the road. Let's see, getting a handle to our own executable file, I think we already essentially did that as well. Well, we didn't quite, so I guess those will be there. All right. So I think we'll leave those for now, but I'm going to go ahead and first tackle that set cursor because we don't do that currently, and you can see that that has one particularly odd effect, which is basically that whatever the cursor, people were wondering why it's the spinning weight thing. And the answer is it's not actually the spinning weight thing. It's whatever the cursor was before it entered our window. Because we don't respond to the WM set cursor call, and we did not set a cursor in our win class, what Windows does is it just does not touch the cursor state when you move it into our window. So what that means is you can change it to anything you want just by like getting it to that thing and quickly hopping it over, right? I couldn't quite get it without passing over this, so it turned into that. But you know, if I could get it in there, yeah, you can see if I can get it in there without it going over the line, you can make it be the arrow. And if I moved it in this way, it would always be the arrow because we're passing over that thick band. Same this way, right? You can see I can make it be the text edit cursor if I really wanted to, probably. Can't quite make it. But you get the idea. So basically, that's what's actually happening at the moment. But if you look at what's actually happening, and in fact, we could talk about this because we never really talked about this. It's not super important for us because we just don't have a lot of it going on, but there is a tool in Visual Studio called Spy++ inside the Tools menu. If you open it, you get this sort of thing that's like a list of windows, right? And our window is one of those windows. You could find it in this list. These are all the windows that are in the top level in the system. You can see Krita has a bunch of pop-ups that it creates and other sorts of things like this. And you can see Visual Studio in there and blah, blah, blah. And here's our command prompt, that sort of thing. There's Emacs, right? Good old Emacs. What this tool allows you to do, it's much more handy for applications. It's not something you typically use for games a whole lot because you just don't process that many window messages at the end of the day. But just for educational purposes, this particular tool does allow you to do a few things where you can kind of see what's going on in your application as far as Windows is concerned. What you can do is you can go to Find Window, so you don't have to look in this list, and it gives you this hilarious little crosshairs that you drag and move over a window, right? And you can see that it's found our window, Handmade Hero, and there's our win class, just like we registered it. And if I hit OK, that basically will bring me right to where it is in the list. And so, you know, you could also just look through the list and found it, but you know, it's a little quicker to do it that way sometimes. Once you have it, you can go ahead and you can right-click and do highlight if you don't know where the window is, and in theory it's supposed to blink, but I didn't actually see that happen. I don't know if that's an interaction with OBS or something. It's supposed to kind of blink the window for you, but really the thing we care about is, well, you can look at properties as well, which is kind of fun. You can look at what window styles are set in your window, and you can see other kind of stuff like this. The window class styles, all that stuff we registered is all actually in here. You can see that there's no cursor registered, no icon registered, no menu registered, no background brush, all that kind of stuff. But the more interesting thing for our purposes now is if you right-click and go to Messages, you can actually see what the messages that are getting dispatched by Windows to us are, right? And now a lot of these we were actually expecting to get. So for example, if we go in here, you can see if I hit a key, you can see that it's having key ups and key downs get dispatched, right? And so that's all good. But what's kind of what you can see if you look at it normally is we're getting these NCHI hit test or NC hit test messages and set cursor messages, as well as mouse move messages, none of which we're responding to. And it's that set cursor message that we really want to talk about because that's the one that would allow us to control what the cursor is. Now, like I said, there's two ways you can actually do this. Oh, another thing that's interesting about these, I believe, you can kind of go in here and you can actually say which ones you want. Yeah, so if you go in, if you right-click in here, you can click on logging options. It's a quick way to get, I think it's also up here. You can go ahead and get to the messages that you want to see. So you can kind of like highlight, you can see all the Windows messages in here, and you can clear and only select ones that you wanted to see if you're looking for particular messages, and that helps cut down on the cruft a little bit. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Anyway, yeah, so that is how that works. We don't really need to use it for any particular reason here, but I just thought I'd bring it up in case you were having troubles where you might want to see that. What I want to do is I just want to start processing that set cursor message, and like I said, there's really two ways we could do this. One is down here when we register our win class. So one thing that we could do, right, is we could say there's a, I believe it's H cursor, which is inside the window class structure when we register it. And then again, this is the thing that controls how our window behaves. Anything that's created with this window class, but we're only creating one window with it, right? What we could do here is we can load a cursor basically out of the default cursor set, and I'll show you what that means.
Well, none of this is going to look quite the same on my end, right? Because I'm using SDL, but we'll figure it out. If I go to that create window call, and I look at the window flags, we can kind of see there's anything about the cursor. Is that what this is? Yeah. These are the window flags. Keyboard, Vulkan, metal, pop-up menu, utility, mouse capture, mouse focus, mouse grabbed. I wonder if you do this, like if it traps the mouse, you pass in this flag, if it traps the mouse inside of the window. But so what he is showing is that, yeah, on that window class that he's defining, you can throw the cursor on there, or you can start doing stuff with the cursor on there, but it doesn't look like there's really anything equivalent in STL, so it may just be, I'll probably just have to look it up, to be honest, instead of trying to just kind of guess my way through all of these STL calls to set up the main program, the whole windowing thing. But I mean, there really isn't much outside that I can remember outside of this right here. Maybe in a init, but probably not. Init everything. Yeah, this just says, give me all of these things. I want to be able to use audio, video, controllers, and such. So I don't know exactly how this is going to look, but we'll figure it out. Hello, Brayo, if I'm pronouncing that right. I didn't know you still streamed. It's kind of a new thing. I only just started a few weeks ago. Started up again after, I think the last time I'd streamed before, a couple weeks ago, was like in the summer of 22, back before my first son was born. And since then, I just took a long time to figure out if I wanted to stream or what I would stream if I was going to stream. And then I ultimately landed on just streaming programming, because that's what I do for work anyways. And I've been interested in learning games programming for a long time, so that's what I'm doing. But thanks for dropping by. I appreciate it. Hopefully whatever it is I'm doing now is of interest to you. And what I'm doing right now is I have to figure out this cursor thing. So if I look up, let's just try trusty Google, STL cursor. It looks like you can do like a create and set cursor call. Cursor to make active. So I might have to like define one. So instead of it like being on the window class, it's just a separate STL thing that you can create. Create a cursor using the specified bitmap data and mask. Well, is there like a default? Can I like get cursor? Get the active cursor. Returns the active cursor or null if there is no mouse. Well, so he's doing that. Let me see here. He's doing that inside, like it. So it basically, this isn't quite right, but he makes this win class A thing, right? Which is basically what our window could be thought of as here. Window has mouse captured, unrelated to mouse grabbed. Window has grabbed mouse input. Okay, so that's not, this is, I didn't see this before, but this, I guess, explains what those are for. So we'd have to set something to capture the mouse, and all this does is just return whether it has captured it. Guess it doesn't hurt to learn more about STL. So he's doing this under the window class. He's doing it in that win class object that he's defining. Using the load cursor win32 function. So if I just did this over here, like SDL get cursor, and then I wanted to just print it out. Like, do we get anything? If we get null, then that tells us that my understanding is incorrect, right? If we get something, then we're going places. We're getting somewhere. Well, it did not give us nil back, so that's good, right? So now, if I, I should probably like look specifically up how you would do this, like hide cursor SDL. I guess you could just toggle show cursor like this. Toggle whether or not the cursor is shown. Okay. So in which case I don't even need the handle, right? I don't know what this toggle value is supposed to be, actually. Enable to show the cursor, disable to hide it. Disable, like that. And so now, I don't even know if you guys would ever be able to even see my cursor, but it does appear to be disabled now. When I jump into my game window here, it disappears. But I don't know if you were ever able to see it before. You can kind of see it, actually. It looks like it's showing up in OBS to me, anyway. It like shows up just as I'm transitioning in and out of the game window. So, pretty darn easy. I don't know if that's really all Casey does, so I'll keep watching and see if he gets, does anything more interesting with showing and hiding the cursor. But where do I work? Or if too private, what kind of company? Well, if you're resourceful enough, I'm not hiding where I work, but I'm also not advertising it, and that's for reasons that will hopefully become clear in the future. I'll just say that I work at a relatively large enterprise company that is in technology and works in a specific domain, but I work as a data engineer for that company. So that doesn't tell you the domain, right, specifically of the data, but I work with data. That's my thing. So Apache Spark and all kinds of cloud stuff, that's kind of my bread and butter. I also do a lot of just systems and tools and back end and front end stuff. I kind of do everything I literally do everything for my startup that I've been working on for a few years now, which I hope to talk more about in the future, but the timing is not right. It's all about the timing. Rayo said, I used to absolutely love your YouTube channel. It's a little late, but congratulations on your son and your marriage. Thank you. Your videos made an impression on me as a teenager. Happy for you. Well, I appreciate that. It's always nice to hear, and I hope things are going well for you as well, and I'm happy to have made any sort of positive impact on anybody at all. And that's just generally what I try to do. I think that's really what I was trying to do with those videos that I was making. And that's what I'm trying to do here with this stream. It's all very new to me, and it's uncomfortable because I'm not used to having to work, on stream. It's just a different, I never really considered doing it. And then I saw more and more people doing it online, programming, either in videos or on stream, that is. So I'm still figuring it out, but the more I do it, the more comfortable I get and the more fun it gets. So let's see what Casey does next here.
This gets into sort of these Windows minutia things that we really just don't care about very much as a game developer, but once in a while you kind of brush up against them. A real application uses all kinds of this stuff oftentimes, like an app style application that has lots of mouse interaction that isn't custom, sort of standard Windows controls and all that sort of stuff. So basically, this load cursor function, what it's normally meant to do is there's a thing called an RC file that compiles into a res file, which binds into the resource fork of your executable and all this other nonsense that we really just don't care about for the most part. We will have to care about it a little bit when we want to actually make an icon for our game, so that when it's sitting there in Windows, when you do a double click on it, it has an icon. We'll have to see how to do that. It's called a resource file, and we'll have to do that. But we're not doing any of that right now, so we actually don't have any resources, which are things like strings or images that get loaded out of the executable directly. Basically, this load cursor function would normally allow you to load a cursor by name using a string. Would allow you to load that out of your executable, one that you had drawn and baked in there using the resource editor, which is a thing in Visual Studio that would allow you to edit cursors and save them in there, right? We don't want to do that because basically we're not going to have a cursor except in debug mode. So all we really want to do is say whether or not we're in debug mode, and if we are in debug mode, we would want to show the cursor, and if we're not, then we wouldn't, right? Because the release version of our game should never show a mouse cursor of any kind, since it's not a mouse-controlled game. But the thing that I was talking about now is if you wanted to always show a cursor, what we could do is just load cursor here, right? And we need to pass our h instance, which we've already got, and then we just pass a constant, which would load some of the default stuff that you don't actually need to bake into executable, that's just in Windows proper that it can load. And so like the standard arrow is IDC arrow. We could load IDC cross, for example. So here we go. Let's just put that in there as a simple example. And now when we ran the game, in theory, you know what? There's one other thing that I guess we would have to do. Actually, no. I feel like that should have worked. I'm a little surprised at that didn't work. Oops.
So I kind of misjudged where he was going with that, but what he was just talking about, right, was like if we'd want to be able to see the mouse if we're in debug mode. So we do something like this, right? And we'd enable the cursor if we're in debug mode, but we disable it otherwise. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily what I'd want to do, because I don't know that whatever hypothetical game that I'd want to make at some point would not have a mouse or wouldn't use the mouse as part of the gameplay. Think of like, I don't know, like Diablo or something, like you're pointing and clicking all over the screen to go do the thing or kill the baddies, right? But the other thing here is that he's actually setting the type of cursor, and I don't know, like, what cursor related procs do we have altogether? We have not a whole lot. I would think that like set cursor here we go. This is basically what I was looking for. So how would we set this on whatever cursor that we get back? So that way we could set it to be, not some random like resizing cursor or whatever. Like any of these. I don't want any of these, right? Like if we were to just set it to, what did he do? He did the crosshair, I think. Yeah, IDC cross, whatever the IDC stands for, I don't know, but that's what I want to do. I want to say, let's get the cursor, or let's set the cursor to be a crosshair, right? This takes a pointer to a cursor. A cursor just looks like an empty struct here. So is it as simple as Where else does system cursor show up? Oh, okay, that's different from regular cursor. Oh, no, it's not. Wait, is it? Yeah. System cursor is just a c.int enum. I feel like I should just be able to set cursor and pass this to it. So, right? No? Would I have to get it first? I guess I deleted that get cursor code that I had. Whoops. Like we dereferenced it and said it's a crosshair system cursor dot crosshair. Is that even allowed? I didn't think so. Cannot assign et cetera of type system cursor to cursor in assignment. Okay, well, let's see what Google says about this. STL change cursor. I don't want to just get the answer. I want to like think about what it is I'm trying to do a little bit before I just go and get the exact Stack Overflow thing that does the thing. And this is effectively what I'm trying to do, but it's not. I'm not going about it correctly. So it wants us to create a new one. 9 years after your question. Hold up. This is awesome. So in 2013, Ken Kin with this, what is that, Mojo Jojo avatar asked, oh, I guess that create system cursor call was in a to-do state. The cursor did not change. What should I do? And then 9 years after your question, this wonderful person, Tron, answered in 2022. They said they had the same problem. And also, I do have my dark reader mode extension installed after being shamed into getting it in an earlier stream. So thank you for that. Yeah, I don't know. It seems pretty straightforward though. Right, we're just gonna do this, but we're gonna do it in Odin. So I think I was kind of on the right track, but instead of, like, you can't just assign the cursor that you get back because you can't change an existing cursor. It's not allowed. So we can just say that we have a cursor, or we have a pointer to one, rather. And then we can create a cursor. Now, I don't know. So this more generic call takes a whole bunch of stuff so that you could make a cursor that uses, you know, like a bitmap, essentially, or not a bitmap, but, you know, like its own image. What is that mask value? Like, what does this do? Create cursor. Like, does this have to do with like alpha or something? And then you could say how wide and tall it is, and hot X and hot Y. Ooh. Okay. Anyway, so something to keep in mind, like, I don't know if I really need to add a to-do in here, but I can add a note. It's like if we want to add a custom cursor someday, take a look at STL create cursor. I think that's what you do. And then over here is what where we'll pass in that. In fact, I don't think I even need to. Whoa. Back that up. We don't need to do this. I was thinking that we'd need to declare this and then pass it into the STL call, but we don't need to do that. And then we set cursor with this, and then I think we're good. Right? And we're not in debug mode, so it'll hide it. Yep, so the cursor is still hidden. But if we get rid of this, or, you know, otherwise just say, let's always enable it for now, I should get a crosshair, right? Yep. So I don't know if that's showing up for all of y'all in the internet, but it does what we expect, so that's awesome. Cool, that wasn't too bad. Like, the more I use of STL, I've seen quite a bit of criticism of STL, and I'm sure that there's a lot of valid criticism about it, but from what I have used of it up to this point, it's certainly been less painful than juggling Win32 stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's just because Win32 is that bad, or that esoteric, that, you know, stagnant of an API. I really don't know. But even Win32 wasn't that bad. Like, I've used REST APIs. I have to use REST APIs that do much less interesting things and are somehow just as painful, if not more painful, to use. It reminds me of this GraphQL API that I used to have to deal with for work. That was yeah, I don't want to relive that. No thanks.
Why didn't that work? That is very odd. So I guess I guess I'm just misremembering. I thought that if you put one in there and you call def window proc on set cursor, which we do, right? Because we don't handle the set cursor message, so the set cursor message will get passed through to here, right? I thought that would mean, oh, I know what I did wrong. This load cursor, if you use one of the things, it's going to try to load it out of this executable, but I just said we don't have any of these in our executable. So it'd be load cursor 0. If you want to load one of the default ones from Windows, you have to pass the null to tell it that you're trying to load one of the Windows ones. Forgot about that. Let's try that again. There we go. So that's what I expected to happen. So you can see this is a little XOR cursor kind of thing that Windows supplies as one of their default cursors. So now inside our window, it will always be that. It won't just be whatever the last thing was. So you won't have that spinning anymore, and that's fine. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to be a little more explicit about it because I'd like to be able to have it so that in the game can dynamically control whether or not the cursor is visible. We don't have a debug overlay or anything yet, so we don't really have a reason to use that at this time, but I would like to be able to do that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and and make it happen that way. So we're going to leave hcursor as 0 for now, and basically get rid of that sort of window class one so that it won't set it for us. So then I'm going to go ahead and get up, go up to the window callbacks here. When we get a WM set cursor message, I can do exactly the same thing that I was doing before, essentially, right? So I'm going to need this cursor. I don't really want to bother you. I think you actually could just call load cursor every time because I don't think it incurs any cost. It doesn't like open a new handle to the cursor if you're just loading one of the default cursors. But at the same time, we have a Win32 state structure that we're able to access. So in theory, oh, and you know what? I wonder if set cursor can be intercepted the way we were doing it before. Well, so let's actually look at that as well. Let's take a look at this here. I'm going to put an assert in here. And then I'm going to go ahead and see if it ever gets dispatched in normal cases directly to us. Because again, this is for debug only, so if once in a while it didn't, that would be fine. But I want to see if we can intercept this guy, basically. So if we can intercept him, that would mean that we wouldn't have to have any state there. Nope, it looks like it goes directly there. So remember how we did this. I don't know if you recall. But basically, the way that we set things up is we have a thing that processes messages that go through our message pump, our message loop properly. Ones that we are actually dispatching to the window ourselves, that Windows puts on our queue. But then we also have our window callback, which essentially is the thing that Windows will sometimes just flat out call. And there's nothing we can really do about that, right? Remember I talked about that.
guess I never bothered to check if there's like a set cursor thing going on in that event processing code. Like if I do like case cursor or something, maybe it would be a window specific thing. Key down, key up. Wasn't there like a window? Yeah, window event. Yeah. Nothing there. There's mouse wheel. Yeah, just controller stuff and keyboard stuff, window, yeah, mouse, but nothing regarding like updating the window cursor. So I think that might just be something that you can't really deal with STL. I'm not too worried about it. It's not super important, but I should probably make a note to myself to look into it a little bit more. But it seems like you can just, you know, if you need to do something with the cursor, just make those calls that we were looking at. So I think we're good.
In theory, it's always supposed to go through the message pump, but it doesn't. I don't know why they ended up in such a hybrid scenario. It's kind of bad, but you know that's just the way it is. So it looks like our set cursor will have to happen there, which means we'll have to make our cursor a global, but that's fine. There's really no problem with that. So we can do a global cursor here, and we can basically say that the set cursor happens in there. Not a big deal. I just wanted to see if it was possible for us not to do that. So here's the global variable. We have an H cursor, and this is basically the debug cursor. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set that inside that set cursor call. We will use the debug cursor. In fact, I guess I should call it the global debug cursor. So debug global cursor. So, and then I will call set cursor, which is the function in Windows that actually sets what the cursor is for our window, right? So when it asks us what the cursor should be, we can set what the cursor should be so that it will know. Now, what I would like to know, though, of course, is I want to know. It's been a long time since I wrote any set cursor code, so I just want to go through and read and make sure what the things are that Windows expects us to do inside this message when we receive it. And let's see what it says. So the def window. Let's see. Sent to the window if the mouse causes the cursor to move within a window and mouse input is not captured. Okay, so basically we're just going to get this. The def window proc, blah, blah, blah. Pass the message to window. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anything particularly weird that we'd have to do here. So basically, if we wanted to, we just go in here. Set cursor. What do I have to pass for set cursor? Do I just pass set cursor? Do I not pass the window handle? Oh my, I don't pass the window handle. I guess it's just right. I guess it's just because you could be setting there's a thing you can do in Windows where you capture the mouse cursor and it can move anywhere, but it still technically belongs to your window. So I guess it's not really a Windows specific thing. I guess it's just kind of an ownership thing. So I guess when we get a set cursor, we'll just go and set it there directly, and that should set it to the debug global cursor. Of course, the debug global cursor hasn't been initialized, so at startup, when we do our win class, what we would like to do basically is also load that cursor. So I'll do a load cursor here, and we'll do that. We'll do IDC arrow, which is just the default cursor. So that.
I guess the thing that I'm getting hung up on with this is we have to create our own cursor, a brand new cursor. I also noticed, and I don't know if this matters or if this is relevant at all, but his cursor is a different color from mine. Mine is like, and there could be, who knows why this is the case. It's not, mine is dynamically changing when I'm, depending on what I'm pointing at, right? And I don't know why that is. I just don't care for the fact that I don't understand the nuance here, what's happening underneath the hood, like what SDL is doing. I don't imagine it really has any performance ramifications, but how would I know without looking a bit more deeply into this? Like what? It seems like we just create it at startup, and then we just hang on to it, and then that's just the cursor that STL will use whenever the user has their mouse in the window that we've created. So it's not like we're doing something inside of a loop. That's what Casey was just looking at, right? Where yeah. So I think it's kind of the same outcome. We're not doing anything nasty with that. Like what he was kind of addressing, I think, there is just that if we make the cursor inside of the event processing loop, then, and you do it every time, you're always making a new cursor, then that's obviously no good. But he's just going to load it once, and then he's using the set cursor event to change the cursor to the thing he wants it to be once it enters the window, but SDL is kind of abstracting that away, right, with this. And basically, it's going to be making those Win32 calls to do something similar underneath the hood. And I guess that's just the thing to note to myself, is that we do it once up here, and then it sure seems like by setting it here, SDL is just always going to use that. And then if and when we want to hide it, then we know how to do that too. I think that's all I care about. And in that case, I think we're good. Is it the negative color of what it's on? That's kind of what it looks like, but I also, you know, I don't have a good intuition for what it is I'm looking at when it comes to things like that. But that seems to be a safe assumption, because if I'm hovering over black, if I'm hovering over white, it's black, right? If I'm, it kind of weirds me out that it turns almost like a gray color if I'm hovering over this brown, but maybe that's right. Well, like here, if we hover over this, the mushroom, the red mushroom, we get like kind of a light blue look. So maybe that's just the default behavior for this cursor on Windows 11. You know, I really don't know. But I don't think I should care that much, because if we were going to use a custom cursor, then, you know, we would have to figure out how to deal with that in its own way anyways, right? So this is plenty good enough for whatever extent I should care about this. You know, I think we're good.
Our cursor is initialized. Then, in theory, we should be able to do something where we actually get that set cursor to work. Although, we still had our weight. Looks like it's working now for the most part. But, yeah, I've got a few oddities there. I'm not sure why it was still looping. I'm not sure why we get the weight arrow when we first come in there. It still thinks our application is busy, which is a little odd. I don't know if there's some messages that we're not responding to there or something that's going on there. But also, it looked like we were doing that set cursor call everywhere, so we didn't actually get our sizing stuff right. So I wonder, yeah, I wonder what we want to do there exactly. I wonder if what we want to do is basically just let the default WinProc handle it, so that it'll do the sizing stuff for us, and then we will only set the cursor to something if we need to. So for example, we can do a set cursor 0 in there. And in theory, I believe that would make the cursor not appear. Yeah. And so you can see if we do a set cursor 0, we basically get no mouse cursor at all, which is what we would want in a release mode scenario, right? So maybe what we would prefer to do is actually just do something like if cursor is hidden, you know, or I guess if show, or like if debug show cursor or something like this, then we will actually allow the def WinProc to handle it, otherwise not. So we could do something that looked a little like this. And then instead of having a global cursor, we just have debug global show cursor, something like this. There we go. There we go. So, you know, what I could do here is basically say, all right, we'll actually set up the cursor in our WinProc, so that it'll basically allow Windows to do whatever random stuff it does, so we don't have to go figure out all the right stuff to do. So in here, we'll still do that, where we actually specify a cursor. We'll load out the default cursor, IDC arrow, and then we'll just have our debug global will basically be debug global show cursor. And for now, I guess what we can do is basically say, you know, we've defined in our handmade platform.h, we've got our definitions for what's supposed to be, or at least I thought we did, for like handmade internal and stuff like that. Handmade internal. Did we leave those in here? Oh yeah. So this should actually be this should actually be a handmade platform, because that actually affects everybody. Just want that documentation there. So basically, we said these were the things we were going to do. So if handmade internal is on, so this is an internal build, then we probably want that mouse cursor, right? We want to see the mouse cursor. And if we're building a release build, then we wouldn't want that mouse cursor in there, right? Oops. And then I didn't actually change this to bull 32, which is what I wanted. So now when we do our build, in theory, we should have the mouse cursor work properly. I still don't know. I do not know why the little spinning arrow is happening there. I'm guessing we haven't done something that it wants us to do to let it know, so that it will know that we're done loading. And I don't know. Let's take a look and see if we can find out what that is. Let's take a look. Google.
I just remembered, because I think he's still compiling in debug mode. And that's why he's still seeing his cursor, obviously, right? Well, he's using that switch when he goes to compile his own code. I think I'm just going to go ahead and add that switch back to my build here. Yeah, so we don't necessarily want to do that because I don't want to see all this debug stuff printing out. I just kind of want to see the mouse, right? So something like this happens, it kind of makes me wish that I had my own, like, you know, internal flag like that or something. But yeah, I guess for now I would just comment out the disabling of the show cursor like I was doing.
We want to know how does Windows know your app is done loading? No. So, yeah, Windows or Win32 cursor.
I also thought that he changed his to a cross. Did he change that? I wasn't paying attention.
Arrow spinning. Let's see here. Typing the hourglass, spinning cursor, display. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to look this one up on my own, basically. So, essentially, if I remember correctly, unfortunately, I remember the circumstance, but I don't actually remember what the actual set of things is. My recollection is that when a Windows application starts, what happens is it assumes that the application is loading and uses that arrow with the spinning cursor. It uses that until you have done something, some set of things that it looks for. If you do any one of those things, it assumes that you've finished loading. I don't actually remember what any of them are, unfortunately. And I'm guessing we just aren't doing whatever that is, right? So if that makes sense. And I don't really know. I don't know if anyone here has this sort of thing. Let's see. Yeah. Doesn't look like these people know. I really want a Raymond Chen post. Let's see here. Let's see. Wonder if I can just go ahead and say Raymond Chen. Let's see. Raymond Chen. Let's just do cursor. No, it doesn't look like I can quickly get it. Let's see. Yeah, I really want a Raymond Chen. Raymond Chen's site is awesome because he answers, you know, basically Windows questions in a very thorough way that's usually very accurate. But yeah, so I don't know why it thinks we're still loading. It's okay, I mean, it goes away after a second, but really it should have gone away right then because there's nothing actually that we're doing. So I'm not sure why it thinks we need to keep doing that, that cursor. But I'm sure it's just a case of something where there's some call that it would prefer that we were making that we are not making. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to assume for now. I don't actually know. But we'll leave that as a to-do, and I'll see if I can find an article on it, because I remember explicitly reading about that long ago, and I've just forgotten. So we'll change this to make the right calls so Windows doesn't think we're still loading for a bit after we actually start. So there. Now, we can use Raymond Chen right now because full screen support is something that it would probably be nice to go ahead and put in there as well, which is that we don't really have too much of that going on because our renderer is kind of fixed to just rendering that little square at the moment, but we're going to want to start, you know, getting away from that, especially when we start on the renderer proper. So one thing I did want to say was basically full screen Raymond Chen. This is, to give you an example since we were talking about it, let me see.
Before we get into the full screen stuff, I wanted to back this off and see, did he change it to be, like when he calls the load cursor, because it looked like it swapped to being a regular pointer cursor instead of
things. It's going to try to look past the null to tell it that
instead of this crosshair that he has there. And he goes and he's trying to figure out the event loop stuff for handling that set. Yeah, he just changed it to an arrow and I wasn't paying attention. Okay, well, I kind of like the crosshair, but we'll do things the Casey way and leave it as an arrow. All right, where was I? Full screen.
on it, because I remember explicitly reading about that long ago and I've just forgotten. So we'll change this to make the right calls so Windows doesn't think we're still loading for a bit after.
And speaking of that, we just don't seem to have that problem. Like if I load this up, like we just beam right in and we've got a regular pointer. So I don't know what that's about or if he even ever fixes that. Maybe he does, and we'll see it soon enough. But That's weird.
actually start. So there. Now, we can use Raymond Chen right now because full screen support is something that it would probably be nice to go ahead and put in there as well, which is that we don't really have too much of that going on because our renderer is kind of fixed to just rendering that little square at the moment, but we're going to want to start, getting away from that, especially when we start on the renderer proper. So one thing I did want to say was basically full screen Raymond Chen. This is, to give you an example since we were talking about it, let me see if I can find one of those. Here we go. So I believe this is a good article on that. I don't actually know if that's true. Let's see. Let's see here. Let me actually see if I can find. Yeah. So I guess that's the best one. I don't know. This doesn't look like the one that I was thinking of. I'm actually thinking of a different Raymond Chen full screen article. Let's find out. Let's see. Raymond Chen. Let's do Switch. I want to show you because this is a good blog. It's a good blog to go on. I don't know if see if the Stack Overflow has a link to it here. Google's failing me today. I guess my Google foo is not very good. Here we go. This is the one I was thinking of, I believe. Yes. Here you go. So basically, if we want to just put our window up and cover the whole screen, which is something that we might want to do, basically, this code is some probably verifiably decent code because it comes from Raymond, who actually works on Windows and stuff, and tends to have the right sort of answers to all of the crazy stuff that goes on inside Windows. Because obviously, there's just so much stuff in Windows, and it's often so crazy spaghetti in there, that the likelihood that you'll figure out how to do something like properly set a full screen window without doing something wrong in some scenario is probably unlikely. So if you can find Raymond Chen showing you how to do something, I highly recommend that you take his advice. That said, maybe this won't work. We'll have to double check. Even Raymond Chen is wrong sometimes, but I suspect that basically if we want to place our window at full screen, this is probably the best place to start because essentially he knows those internals a lot better than anyone outside like us is going to know. And so it's a good thing to look at sort of what he does. And so you can take a look at this routine.
Well, we can't do things that way, but we do have this handy dandy SDL call to set the window to full screen. And I sure do hope that it's that easy. It looks like it takes some flags too. So we have full screen desktop, or 0. And I guess we just want to switch on whichever of those. What is full screen versus full screen desktop? Yeah, we were just looking at this inside of the code not long ago. What? Does it just have to do with that, like the title bar? Full screen window, full screen desktop with the title bar? I suppose that might be what that means. I guess I'll let Casey get a little bit further ahead because I'm not sure how he wants to handle this. And like, my intuition tells me that we're just going to want to go into our key down and then we'll map it to a key, right? Whichever one it is. Well, I think it would just be like Alt Enter, right? That's what it is on Windows. So might have to pull this out. This Alt key was down assignment, so that way we can use it both to close our window when we want to Alt F4, and also like this is going to be, would it be like Enter? What is it? Oh, I need to put that case inside of the bracket here. It's going to be like dot enter kp key press enter. Is that right? It just seems weird because the rest of these are all labeled like very non-interestingly. Like escape is the escape key. Space is the space key, and then down here we have KP enter. What's that about? Anyway, I'll just kind of leave that in there for now. But in here, right, is when we would do our toggling with STL full screen, set window full screen. So we might have to like keep something around, or we need to like get that value somehow. Either we need to store it or we need to get it so that we know what mode we're in, so we know what mode to set it to, right? We'll see how Casey does it.
He suggests here, which is basically a toggle. It'll toggle between full screen and not. And so the way that it works is first it goes ahead and asks what the style of the window is currently. And if the style of the window is overlapped window, which remember is our style that we were using, which is basically a window that you just kind of generally, you know, it's exactly this kind of window. It's this kind that you can move around and do stuff with. It's not full screen at all, right? If it's one of those, then he basically says, let's see what the monitor is, the primary monitor is that we're on, and let's save where our window is currently. So this basically saves the location of the window as it stands, and this gets the information for the primary monitor, which is, I guess what it does is, I want to say, we'll have to look at what that default to primary does, but I want to say it actually gets the window, the monitor that the window's currently on. And I assume default to primary would just mean if the window like straddles two monitors, default to the primary one or something like that. I don't know, but we can check. Let's look at what that does. I don't know exactly what that flag does. Let's see. Monitor info, get monitor info. Oh, sorry, monitor from window is actually the thing taking that. Monitor from window. There we go. So that takes the window handle, right? And then, you know, gives us back whichever monitor the window's on. But let's see. If the window does not dissect any... Okay, so basically if the window is not anywhere that it can determine what the monitor is, then it will do default to nearest, default to null, or default to primary. So obviously we want default to primary because we'd like to go full screen on something. Yeah, so that's fine. So basically that's what that does, right? And then we go ahead and, assuming that we were able to actually execute those two function calls, we set the style to not have any of the bits of overlapped window in it. Remember, overlapped window, for those of you who don't remember, we actually did this before. Overlapped window is, ooh, you could jump right to window styles. Look at that. Thank you, Google. Overlapped window is actually an aggregate. So you can see it's actually overlapped caption, sys menu, thick frame, minimize box, maximize. All the things that sort of make a standard window, all those flags are an overlapped window. So basically what he's doing is he's saying, let's clear out all of those. They're gone now. We masked them out. And then he's going to call set window pose to basically change it to be the size of the full screen, right? And he's saying don't change where it is on in the Z order, so don't raise it or lower it, and then give it a notification. That's what these flags do in set window pose. Give it a notification that its border, that it's like this part, it's sort of external to the client area, has changed and needs to be redrawn. Assuming that the thing was already full screen, which is what he's doing in this case, he does the opposite. He puts those overlapped window things back in. He sets the window back to whatever the last place it was, and then he goes ahead and does that set window pose to update again. The set window pose is basically a thing that, it's weird that there's set window placement and then you have to call set window pose. That's just how ridiculous Windows is. Basically, when you call this, it doesn't actually do the repainting necessarily for you, so you have to go ahead and do this to get your frame to repaint properly. Windows is full of horrible stuff like that. That's just the way it is. This is why you have to look at people like Raymond Chen to find out how to do stuff properly, because the chances that you'd figure out these exact incantations are like nil, right? So there you go.
I love that he calls them incantations too. Yes, you got to cast the magic spell so that your window does the thing that you want it to do. You can't just, we can't all just use STL all the time, right? And call set window full screen. Sometimes you got to know the Windows spell. You got to be a Windows wizard.
So in theory, this should work, I believe. And so let's go ahead and try it. Like I said, I trust Raymond, so I think that this is probably a good way to go. So we'll go ahead and do essentially exactly what he says. For all intents and purposes, we might make a slight modification here or there, but for the most part, we're going to just exactly copy what he does, because like I said, he knows much better than we do. So global window position, something like this. Oh, and he wants it to have that size of there, so that basically would be, I assume that the reason he's doing that is just so he can use it even if it wasn't initialized yet. I'm not exactly sure why, but yes, I guess when you call, you have to give it that size when you get window placement.
Yeah, so I suppose I can global window position. It is a window placement type, so maybe that does make sense. I don't know. But we're just going to have like a toggle, right, essentially between the three things that we can have. So I go, and like I don't know so I don't need this cursor. If I go down here, I don't need this cursor to be global, right? Because I don't need to do anything with it in the event loop, I guess, unless I wanted to respond to a message, like a totally unrelated message that had nothing to do with the set cursor stuff. Like if it was a window message, like I guess, yeah, I don't know. I'm not even sure how to say that, but the point is we don't need to do anything special here. We don't have to make it global, but because we're going to do some, we're going to wait to see if we get the key press right. We're going to want to do the toggling of the window to full screen and off of full screen, out of full screen in the event loop. We have no choice but to do it that way. So if we go into our global stuff up here, we can say that we have like a global window. I guess I'll just call it position like he's doing, but it's going to be SDL. Yeah, is it, would it be more like global window flag or something? Because I think that's all we're setting. Like we're passing in, well, we need to pass in the window too. But yeah, it would just be like global window flags. So flags would be like, we go in here, the only options that we can pass, I keep going back and forth between this here in my code. The only options that we can pass are going to be full screen desktop, or nothing. So we started out with nothing. I think that's all we need to do. Like, we're declaring our flags and they're nothing, right? Right here. Because it's going to zero initialize it. So we're not going to have any flags. And then when we go to create the window, at the very end, we have these flags. Well, I guess we want resizable. Yeah, this isn't quite right. I don't know if I can do this quite the way that he's doing it and have it make sense. Speaking like an Elixir user, yeah, with incantations. Now, that would be more like, you know, I'm going to brew the right potion. I'm going to brew the right Windows potion to get Windows to do the thing. I don't know if there's like a programming language out there where like the name of the language is like a meme on wizardry or whatever, you know, like the spell programming language or the casting programming language. Like if you named your language the casting programming language, first of all, you got casting between different types, and then you got casting spells. You've got everything you need right there to have, you know, a big Gandalf mascot, you know, just rip his likeness off, and you're off to the races with capturing the imaginations of a bunch of people that want to use a language just because the mascot is cool or whatever. I saw a programming language where every program looks like a cooking recipe. Well, that's different. I haven't heard of that. I have not heard of that before. So, yeah, I don't know how I want to do this. It's kind of interesting because we have, well, I could just say we have our window flags like this, right? Undeclared name, resizable. Oh. Huh. That's weird. What am I missing here? Undeclared name. Is it because it can't infer that that's what I want? I thought I was doing this elsewhere. where I've got my flags and I'm just storing it in a variable and then passing it off. But it's telling me that window flags does not have any member. There's just something that I don't quite understand with these bit set things in Odin. And would it be like dot resizable equals 1 or something? Field equals value in a bit set. Literal is not allowed. Like, how does that work then? Right, because this is all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to turn this into something that I can make a dynamic flags variable. And then would it be like flags resizable? Invalid type cannot be used as a compound literal for fields. Clearly, I never understood what was going on here when I was doing this. Because that's what this is doing. It's giving us some flags, but I can't assign it to a variable. I just don't understand why that is. Oh, I did it wrong somehow. What did I do wrong when I was doing that? Was that my problem? I had a space in there? Oh, I just spelled it wrong. Okay. Resizeable. Okay. It's window flags, not flags. Well, I mean, it was complaining about, yeah, I probably did something like this. Is that what you're saying? Like, I was trying to think through this part here, like just instantiating the flags. That's the part I was hung up on, not this aspect of, oh, I have, you know, I'm using a variable that doesn't exist. I was trying to make sense of this error. It's not telling me that, yeah. I mean, it turns out it was telling me the right thing. Or maybe it wasn't, huh? I don't understand. Maybe, so. I could have sworn, like, if I back this up, well. No, I can't even go back to that state I was in. Like, did I do this? Or something? I don't know. Anyway, the point is, so now we have this window flags variable we can pass in there. And I can't leave that like that. And this is spelled wrong. So that works. We're good there. But this can't be the global thing that we have, because when we go to set the full screen, whether we're in full screen mode, that is not going to, like the fact that we have resizable set in here, right? If we were to make this the global flags, that would be, maybe we just ignore it. Like, what would be the actual output? There's only one way to find out, is if we call this using flags that this documentation says it doesn't take, right? Is it just going to ignore those flags and then leave it? Or, I don't know. I'm probably overthinking this, which is fine. Wouldn't be the first time.
and it probably requires that that size is there. All right, so we basically now have a thing which is like toggle full screen for now, and we might make this a little more complicated later. I don't actually know why I guess he was doing it in a message pump kind of a thing, but that X and that Y aren't used, and neither are the key flags, so really that doesn't have to be there. Really all we need to know is what the window was, right? And so we're going to go ahead and get that back. Get that style back. Not a big fan of Hungarian, so I'm just going to go ahead and kind of clean this up so it doesn't look totally out of place. And I might also, while we're at it, snap that who we got the code from, right? This follows Raymond Chen's prescription for full screen toggling. C there.
I guess we could just do it that way. Probably not, because this is doing a bunch more stuff than we need to do. We just need to make one call. There's probably no sense in wrapping that call. So I guess we can just see what would happen if I go back up here to global window flag. So we have this now, and then we'll see where he goes to call that toggle full screen. But my hunch is that it's gonna just be like this. If I pull that out and throw it up here, will that work? I think that's fine. And then we would say, like, if global window flags because we'd want, we can't really compare, well, what would be the way to do that? If I wanted to see if like a certain flag was set within a bit set, maybe this is the wrong way to do this. We could just have like a, you know, full screen bool. And then we would say if we're in full screen, we would call set full screen. And then how do I have the window already? Somewhere in here? Yeah. And then we just call it with nothing, right? Missing type and compound literal. This is not the right call, is it? Set window full screen. Yeah. Yeah, and then otherwise it would be like this. Yeah, there we go. Undeclared name, I did not get that correctly. There we go. I'm just going to try it, because why not? So this KP enter thing, I suppose, is not what I thought it was. Does my Alt F4 still work? I guess I should be wrapping this in an if Alt key was down, if as well, because that's what I meant to do. Yeah, so we're not getting into here. That or this is just wrong, right? Well, I also need to set that to true after we call this, don't I? Global window full screen equals not Well, I guess we could just say true. And then false. But this should have worked because we're going to default to not being in full screen, right? Because that's what that variable is initialized to at first. It's going to be false. So we're going to say if we're not in full screen, wait, is that right? Yeah, if we are in full screen, set it to not be full screen, pass this empty. Or I guess it would it be like windowed? Why can't I type? Windowed. What are all of the things? Resizable, minimize, maximize, borderless. I actually don't see full screen desktop in here. Internal full screen desktop. Why is it internal? You're just not supposed to use that? I don't know. I'm guessing that this is just the wrong thing here. KP enter. I don't know what that is. Keypad is keypad. And I don't have a keypad. So what would be regular enter then? Because it's not a thing. I guess it would be return, wouldn't it? That makes more sense. So we're still not getting the result we want. Do we ever get in here? Do we get into this case branch? We do. So I'm doing something else wrong. We also get oh, we need an is down in here, right? Because this could be like swapping us back and forth really quickly, but here, I just want to see if we're getting into here, which is what I care about. No. Did I bother to see if Alt F4 was working? I think I meant to test that. That's definitely working. I don't know. I need to think about this a little bit more while Casey makes progress too, because I also want to see where he's going to call that. But I think he's going to do something pretty similar.
So that way, if people are wondering what's going on there, they can basically go, oh, okay, let me go read Raymond Chen's article about it and see, you know, why Casey thought that this was the series of steps you're supposed to do. And like, just following Raymond, man. So anyway, we've got the monitor info stuff going on here. He initializes the, oops, I don't have size up there. Okay, monitor info. Again, we initialize it with the size because Windows loves to have us put the size into structs ahead of time for no real reason. I think they thought that would increase compatibility. I doubt it ever did. Anyway, let's go ahead and finish up that there. We need to go ahead and put in our global window position here, like so. And we need to get our monitor info like that. Then our set call should be fine. Basically exactly what he was doing. Style, there we go. And there we go. HWind top. Let's see. RC monitor left. So these are just in the monitor info structure. He's basically just using that monitor info to figure out how big the screen should be, which looks like a good idea to me. That will give us the full screen. And then we just have to do the case where we want to set it back. So there we go. Window. Oops. Window. Wow. I'm typing very well. Window. And we're going to restore that placement here. So this is that global again, window position. And this is just the thing that has it redo the position. Okay. So in theory, that should do our full screen toggle. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down where we do our processing our keyboard messages. Let's go ahead and do that. And so really all I want to do here is I want to call this on a particular key message, right? So I want to basically be able to toggle the full screen when I do a particular key message. And in this case, what I want to do is follow the old, since this is mostly a debugging thing, normally the user wouldn't be hitting a key to toggle full screen. I'm going to use the standard, the Windows standard key for it, which is a bit obtuse, but it is what it is. So I believe we handled Alt F4. The standard for this is actually, if I remember correctly, it's actually Alt Enter, right? So it's basically, I don't remember what the VK code for return is. I don't know if it's enter or return, but if the Alt key was down and they hit return, then I'm just going to call that toggle full screen function, assuming. This also, I always forget to use is down in here, right? I always forget to use, or basically went down, right? I always forget to put things in there. And so these should also be in there because we essentially only want to ever do this stuff on key down. We don't want to do it on key up as well, because otherwise we trigger twice, once when it goes down, once when it comes up. Window is undeclared. Oh, well, yes, that's true. We want to do it on the window that
So he basically did do exactly the same thing that I was trying to do. But why can I not get the same result? Because I think his is just going to work. So I guess the Alt key was down, out of there, and then checks. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing the pain of using case here, where I'm pretty sure he's just using if else everywhere. Because I had to pull out that Alt key was down thing. And now I have two different cases where I'm checking, if Alt key was down. It just feels a little bit clunkier versus just, setting that and then checking all the places, all of the keys where I would even care about an Alt key combination press with some other key. Go ahead, build and run this and just see. Like, we have to get in to these at some point. But we're not. We're not at all. Oh my God. Well, so that did something. I think it full screened it and then immediately unfull screened it, which is what I was worried about. So why is Alt key was down, not working the way that I think it should be? It works just fine when we Alt F4, but there's something else going on here. Like, why can we set global running is false? Well, maybe. Yeah, no, I don't know what that's about. So we're able to get in here and set global running equals false, but we can't do it here. Like, this should have, we should be able to get in here. It's the same thing. It's just, pressing F4 versus return. And I know return is the right key code because we just saw it full screen very briefly before it unfull screened itself. That's ridiculous. Why would that be happening? Or not be happening? It's like it won't let me Alt enter. We can Alt F4. We can't Alt return. Is there any difference if I do this? That's messed up. Oh, you know what? It's because this never gets run. Yeah. We're actually getting the STL quit event. I mean, I saw it right there in the output, right? This is what's happening there. Okay. Well, yeah. We're not intercepting the quit message with that Alt F4 business. We're just getting the STL quit event and setting global running to false there. So this never worked. Okay. Okay, I knew something had to be messed up there. So basically all I need to do is figure out why this doesn't do what I think it should be doing. And then full screen should work. But also, it should also only happen on the is down. So I guess I can worry about the alt thing after, just get rid of this. We can worry about the alt key not registering as being down. And I wonder if it's just because you can't, like you should be able to process both the alt key and some other key at the same time, should you not? Right, because we have a key down message. And this is telling us if we look at the, you know, these modifier keys, we're seeing if the alt key is also down. But maybe this comparison is bad. Key mod, key mod. Is it a bit set thing? Yeah, this should just be it, right? Key mod alt. That should totally work the way I think it should work. Anyway. I don't know why it's not. I mean, just because I think it doesn't mean it's true. So clearly I'm doing something wrong. But if I hit enter, we crash. So that's not a good sign. I wonder why it's crashing. I want to move my window over here so that I can see why, or I want to see what's happening on the stream when I do that, because my whole monitor goes dark. And I have no idea what that looks like on the stream. I'm guessing it doesn't look like anything's happening. It's also weird that it's like struggling, like the window is kind of stuttering to open up now ever since I made these last couple changes. Oh, that's so weird. Oh man, we're clashing. Well, I think I can get rid of this stuff because I do think that we are doing the right thing. Oh. Why did I do that? Oh, it's because yeah, okay. Jeez. I left the global running equals false call in there because I was testing okay, it's working. Sweet. Is that right? Well, now it can't find the window, but I can see the game. So what happens if I copy that and toggle it to be this other window? I think we want full screen desktop. Now that I think about this, because it's like full screening the game in that way that like hijacks control of everything. Gosh, that was just foolish. I don't know, because so I wanted to see how come global running is being set, you know, here, or global running is being set to false here, but we can't get into this stuff when we were checking, you know, alt key was down. I put global running false in here to see what the difference is. Or maybe I didn't even mean to do that. I don't know. But that got me all kinds of turned around. The point is, I think now we're good. Because now I'm not telling my game to shut off. Right before we try to go to full screen. Right? So setting it to stop running, and then the very next iteration of the loop, it would... you know, quit the program, quit the game, but then right before we were doing that, we were trying to go full screen. So that's all that was. That should not have taken anywhere near as long as it did. I still don't know why we can't get the alt key out properly, but I think that's something I can figure out off stream. So let's try this again. I still don't fully understand why it's struggling to start up there. But we go into full screen and it takes a second and it struggles. I don't know why why OBS is not picking it up. Direct 3D proxy window. What the hell is this? That's really weird. Wes term. Yeah. So for some reason it can't pick up the window when it's full screened, and I don't know exactly why that is. Maybe it's because it's not a window anymore, like it's been like turned into a different type of thing as far as OBS is concerned. I'm sorry I'm getting sidetracked on this like just presentation stuff for the stream, but I want to understand why that is. So anyway, now I can unfull screen, right? Which I think is what I just did. It's just doing all sorts of weird stuff. I just lost my editor. Everything is ruined. Oh no. And now, like, my OBS is jacked up. It looks like you're just getting a static view of my face. Okay, so OBS on my end is completely screwed up, but it looks like the stream is okay. This is all fine, I think, because I'm going to wrap up the stream here in a minute anyways, but if I bring this back to... What scene am I on here? Let's delete this crap. Oh, man. It's so bad. The OBS like preview window is just all messed up, so I have no idea what I'm showing until it shows up on stream. But let's see here. Okay, so we're looking at my editor. That's good. If I come over here and I change this to like desktop full screen, does that give me what I want? Internal desktop full screen? Because there's nothing else here that, I guess, like, yeah, borderless, if we wanted to change it to borderless. Let's just see if this does what we want it to do. Nope. That's lame. What other changes have I made here? We've done really not much at all this stream. It's just been me kind of tooling around with SDL, trying to get this stuff to work. I guess I'll let Casey close out the day, and then I'll try and figure out how to get this. Because like what I'm trying to do is have it full screen in borderless. So I wonder... yeah, I just don't... This is a weird one. Because I didn't even see this in the list of flags before. Well, there's that. You need to pass both of these. So STL full screen desktop. Can that just give us what we want? There we go. Okay. Let me see if that shows up on the stream. I think I deleted the wrong thing here, and I can't really bring it back. No. Oh no. There we go. Okay. Now you should be able to see it, but it might take up the whole entire window. Yeah, so the placement is all wrong, but I promise you that is showing up correctly on my end. It's just because of the way I have it positioned. But now, like this, my guy is in the top left of my monitor, which is what I wanted. And I press enter and we go back and forth. It's not just stealing my monitor away and into full screen. Pretty sure this is what Casey's will do. And I think this was the right move. We just ask if we're in full screen or not, and then we set it back and forth based on that. I need to figure out why Alt key was down is not doing what I think it should do. And that's all. Okay. Let's see what happens with Casey's code, and then we'll close the stream out.
That was coming here. What is it? Hwind? There we go. Yeah, I need to get it out of the message structure because we're not actually in a window handle. And I guess I could also say...
And I just realized, because he's not popped out, you're not even going to see him. There we go. Okay, that was messed up. Now I know. Don't mess with full screen like that, all willy-nilly. But I'm glad I had this neat little thing that SDL gave me, this full screen desktop. This is the thing I was seeing, right? And it's just the flags set to have both of those. And I guess, you know, I was just passing this one in by itself, but we need both of those. Otherwise, SDL doesn't know to actually do the thing. So, wow. Wow. That took way longer than it should have.
I always forget to use, or basically went down, right? I always forget to put things in there. And so these should also be in there because we essentially only want to ever do this stuff on key down. We don't want to do it on key up as well, because otherwise we trigger twice, once when it goes down, once when it comes up. Window is undeclared. Oh, well, yes, that's true. We want to do it on the window that was coming here. What is it, Hwind? There we go. Yeah, I need to get it out of the message structure because we're not actually in a window handle. And I guess I could also say make sure that that is valid. There we go. So let's take a look at what we've got here. Looks like I'm still doing it. That's right. Never learn, will I? I've done this every time we've had the keyboard handling. I forget to do it only on the down. All right, there we go. So there we go. We now go full screen just fine. And so the reason I wanted to do that, of course, was because I feel like later on down the road, we're kind of going to want to have it so that we can switch to full screen and have the renderer do rendering of full screen, even though we'll be horribly slow in software because it's too many pixels. We'll want to test, doing that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in there. It's really simple, like I said, as long as you have an expert to guide you. When Raymond Chen writes about something, it takes a lot of the pain out of Windows because you can just, what he says works. Like he just really knows that stuff better than anyone else. And so you find something on Stack Overflow, it's probably wrong, and you'll go be super grumpy and tear your hair out. However, if the Stack Overflow says, here's what Raymond Chen says, just click on the Raymond Chen link, and you are done. Like, you can pretty much count on that being a pretty solid answer. All right. So, so that's all good. I should mention a couple caveats there. There are caveats that I don't mind, but other people might. So there's multiple ways to go full screen in Windows. I'm doing the one that I prefer, but it has downsides. So the reason I prefer this way is because I find it's a lot more stable, and it doesn't cause weird monitor flashing, and it doesn't cause your HDMI to lose sync and that sort of stuff. But it has some downsides. One downside is you can't change the refresh rate. Now, that's not a particularly big deal these days because you really shouldn't be changing the refresh rate on the monitor, probably. Whatever the users were set to is probably the one that you want. But, maybe they've got it set to something wonky, I don't know, and you want to try and set it to 60. If you think the monitor can handle 60, you can enumerate the modes and do it. So there are other things that you could be calling, right? For example, change display settings. I just want to point this out. Change display settings is what a lot of games will call. Change display settings actually allows you to be much more specific about what's going on. And so after, you would basically do this first. You'd call change display settings, and you would pass a bunch of stuff like what the resolution is that you actually wanted the monitor to be in, right? And then you would still do probably what I just did, follow Raymond Chen's advice, but you'd first call that change display settings. And so sometimes you have to do that if you have other concerns, right? Like basically, we are running the game in whatever mode the user has their monitor in, right? And usually that's okay because what you can do is you can just have the GPU stretch you. Like even if we were only going to render at a small resolution because we can't, like even let's say we only run at 1080p even on GPUs or something, and the user is trying to run at some 240 by 2400 by something or a 3K, 4K display, something like that. Usually what you want to do is just stretch up to that because the stretch split is usually fast enough even on those large displays to compensate. But that's not always true either. Sometimes on some things like Intel integrated graphics parts, the GPU is just horribly slow sometimes, and it can cause you problems, and you really do want to set that display mode. So it's just worth noting that pretty much anything that you're going to do can has some potential negative consequences for the user. If you really want to do fully complete, maybe you would even supply both as possible ways of doing it, and you'd try to detect. Like you'd go, oh, we did the switch, we do it this way, and then if the frame rate's too slow, we try changing the display settings down if we detected the blitz too slow, and maybe we can try doing this on that stream. I don't know. At this point, that really shouldn't be a concern. That's more for older systems, but you never know. And so it's just something to be aware of. I want to mention. I don't want people to think that there's no downside doing it this way. It has a lot of upsides doing it this way, but there is a potential downside or two lurking in the shadows. But anyway, you can see if you implement it this way, it's much nicer because it just goes instantly and there's no weirdness, right? And so you really want to do this method if you can get away with it, and you really only want to do the change display settings if you can't. That said, maybe we should eventually implement the change display settings, and I'll put it to do to that effect. And put in a detection thing where we detect, wait, our frame rate's really slow and the blitz taking all the time. Let's see what we can do about it, right? So let's do change display settings option if we detect slow full screen blitz, just so we've got that in there.
Okay. Well, I'm glad he added that because I was going to add a note myself to that toggle full screen proc. I decided to just go ahead and pull that out. But for our purposes, right, we want, look into the SDL equivalent of change display settings. In case of slow full screen blit or any other reason we might want to do real full screen, meaning rather than like this kind of faux full screening thing that he's talking about where we can very easily toggle and we don't have to do like he was just pointing out the thing that was messing me up a few minutes ago with the monitor flashing when we were going into like the proper full screened windowed mode. If I ever have to do that or I ever decide I want to do that, I wanted to have a note in there, so I'm glad he added one too. And then, like I was just saying, I decided to pull that out because that call was, it wound up being, big enough that I thought, what the heck. So we have this global, and we set full screen, we set you know, the window flags to not. I don't know. So if we do this, do we no longer have it resizable? Because we're setting it to nothing. This is kind of what I was wondering about before. But let's say I go into full screen after I start up, and then I go back out of full screen. Can I no longer resize? I can. So because the window was initialized to, and I guess I can't like stretch it down for some reason. Is that true? I can't pull it out at the diagonal, which is kind of strange. Oh, there it is. Yeah, now I can. So I was just curious about that because this takes like all of the flags. So I wasn't sure if this would like overwrite the flags that you created the window with, and that's what I was really struggling hard to articulate a while back. But now we're good, and I think that's probably it.
All right, so let's see. We took care of our set cursor situation, and we have our full screen situation going on. So I think that's good. And so really all we'll have to do eventually is decide what we want to do render-wise in terms of who gets past what. So when we get a little bit further down the road, this will be good because now we've set ourselves up so that when we want the renderer to start responding to that full screen, we don't really have much work to do in the platform layer. It'll just kind of work. All right, so that's good. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a good thing. Another thing that we could do, I guess, real quickly, I don't know if this is what we want to do long term, probably not, but in terms of stretch DI bits, what we could do too is something kind of a little wonky where we basically do some kind of an if, where we do, you know, if we are in full screen, then do that stretch split. Like if it turns out that you can do a perfect 2x, do the perfect 2x, and that code would be pretty trivial, right? That code would be something that kind of looks like this. Let's say we did something where we said, you know, if window width equals, oops, I should probably put this in the else case, just showing you kind of a simple thing here. This is not what I think I'd want to do eventually, but just to throw it out there. If the window width equals the buffer width times 2, right? Because we know we were currently doing a downsampled by 2 thing, so this is just some hacky code to put in here just to, you know, just to show you, you know, an example. So if we happen to have exactly 2x display, then go ahead and do the full-on blit, basically. So I believe we just want to go ahead and say offset x, offset y is going to be 0 in this case, and then the window width and the window height. So just do the full blit up. So if we do that, then we'll still run the way we normally run when we're in this mode, and when we're in this mode, we'll get full screen, right? And it'll basically just do an upsampling by 2, which is a totally fine upsampling and shouldn't cause us any problems. So, you know, for the time being, that's probably fine. Basically, that allows us on 1920 by 1080 displays, that allows us to do it. In fact, we could go one further, which is actually saying, you know, in the case where it's greater than or equal to it, we'll allow it to happen by basically saying we'll just enforce that it's always 2x, so that we basically don't have any weird scaling, because stretch DI bits doesn't do particularly good scaling if I remember correctly, so we wouldn't really want to do that. But in this case now, if you're resizing the window, right, and you don't have enough room to do a perfect 2x scale, it won't do the perfect 2x scale, but if you do happen to have it, it'll do it, and that'll work. I'm on a 1920 by 1080 monitor right now. If you were on one now that's higher than that and you went full screen, you'd just still get it up in the corner. I guess we could be even a little bit better than that. We could even do it centered. I don't know that that necessarily matters particularly much, but, you know, like I said, later on, you know, maybe we'll fuss with this a little bit too, Casey. Centering black bars, sort of stuff. We could make this, we could spend a bunch of time making these sorts of things better. But basically, we're out of time on the stream. We've sort of done the stuff that I had wanted to do today. There's a couple other things that I would want to maybe do in terms of Windows cleanup, but we'll just roll them into times when we are actually working on that part of the code. Like basically, there is one thing that I want to do with the replay code that we didn't get a chance to do. So anyway, there we go. There's our little dude. He's you know, having a good time, as you can see. He is very happy and cheery, which we like. And so, yeah, I think that's a good place to call it for the day. Because we are right about at an hour. I think I started about 6 or 7 minutes late, and now we are 6 or 7 minutes into the Q&A. So I think now would be a good time to start the Q&A.
All right, so that is where he wraps it, and I'm going to have to come in here and make these changes, but my stream is all jacked up. Like I said, I can't see what I'm showing you until it shows up on the stream, which is not good, and plus it's well after 5 o'clock now, so I'm going to have to wrap this up. But I'll just put in here, you know, you can see that when I go full screen, that I do not stretch the whole texture out to the entire size of the window. We're still kind of stuck up in that top left corner, and I just want to make it so that when I am going back and forth into full screen, handle, you know, drawing to the entire window in full screen, because I have no idea what that's going to look like, right? Like in here, I think it means that I'm gonna have to change something about how this is working, because basically what I do, right, is I specify the size of the rectangle that I want the buffer to be drawn to when we're resizing it, but we only resize it the one time. So that's actually going to be... I'm going to have to think about how I want to do that, right? Because I guess it could just always work off of the rect, right? That's what's happening here. It can work off the rect unless we have a window with dimensions that are over twice, right? He did something like 2x the X and Y or something. So I just need to go and look at that part again and figure it out, and I'll go over what I did in tomorrow's stream. But for now, I gotta wrap this up. So I'll figure that out. I'll figure out why my alt key stuff is not working, and we'll be back tomorrow for more of Odinmade Hero. Have a good rest of your night.